Welcome to the Three Martini Lunch. Grab a stool next to Greg Columbus of Radio America and Jim Garrity of National Review. Three Martinis coming up.
Hey, so glad you're with us for the Tuesday edition of the Three Martini Lunch. We actually have a good martini for you. So that's a huge upgrade from yesterday's mess throughout the Middle East. And we not only have a good martini as it relates to the ongoing woes of the Democrats, we've obviously got our bad martini. If you own stock, you already know what we're talking about there. And in terms of our crazy martini, there is some waste cutting that's happened at the Pentagon. And let's just say some of it is definitely warranted. So there's that. And then, of course, there's free agency. Real quick, the Bears beefed up their defensive line with two big pickups yesterday and also a new center. And given the trades they've already done, they're focused on the trenches, which is good. Former Bears quarterback Justin Fields is now the highly paid new quarterback for the New York Jets. And so, Jim, as I said on Twitter yesterday, I feel like he's a little bit better than what most people think, but I don't know that he's the answer. The roller coaster continues for the Jets at QB.
Greg, there was a time when the likes of Thomas Jones and Brandon Marshall, the Jets would take the Bears' cast-offs and generally get really great years out of them. So I suppose this is a continuation of a tradition. It's just when the offseason began, I said, look, Jets, it was a really disappointing era of Aaron Rodgers. Everything just came crashing down. But I want to see you chin up. I want to see a new era of leadership under Aaron Glenn. Let's just go out there and take the fields. And they apparently meant it. They thought I meant it literally. And so we have now... Yay. Look, I'm now a Justin Fields fan. Let's see how it goes. I understand the logic. 2-year contract, relatively low cost. A bunch of guys in the league have been great reclamation projects, including Sam Darnold and Geno Smith and everybody else the Jets let go. Seems to be... You can also throw in Goff, Stafford, Baker Mayfield. A whole bunch. Some guys do get it together later in their careers, and so I'm hoping for Justin Fields. But hey, if the Bears couldn't teach somebody to be a quarterback, what hope does anyone else have?
I wouldn't make that your benchmark. We haven't had a 4,000-yard passer ever. Here's my advice to you, Jim. You should make the Bears your NFC team, because then you'll already be cheering for all these guys by the time they become Jets, and it'll be very natural transition.
Just changing the color of the uniforms. They don't even have to change the name on the back. Yeah,
that's right. Yeah, so. That's right. You'll be very, very familiar with all these guys. All right. Well,
Greg, rooting for the Jets and Bears, this feels an awful lot like rooting for the DCCC.
Indeed. Well, let's talk about this because while the Republicans are still kind of in the afterglow of the election, although if our second martini is just the tip of the iceberg, that might not last too much longer, but we will find out. But according to this new story from Politico, the Democratic Party is still about as popular as most diseases to the American people. Nearly 2 months into the second Donald Trump administration, a majority of voters in battleground House districts still believe Democrats in Congress are, quote, more focused on helping other people than people like me, according to an internal poll conducted by the Democratic group Navigator Research. Among independents, just 27% believe Democrats are focused on helping them, compared with 55% who said they're focused on others. Especially alarming for Democrats were findings around voters' views of Democrats and work. Just 44% of those polled said they think Democrats respect work, while even fewer, 39%, said the party values work. Only 42% said Democrats share their values. A majority, meanwhile, 56%, said Democrats are not looking out for working people. Only 39% believe Democrats have the right priorities. And so, Jim, if you've been around politics for a while, like we have, one of these big benchmark questions, especially during election seasons, was cares about people like me. And Democrats used to win that sometimes by pretty healthy margins. Republicans were still able to overcome it once in a while. But that has definitely changed. Part of it's more of a populist attitude on the right, obviously. But kind of the sneering attitude of we're better than you is kind of what the Democrats are known for now. And it's not easy to shake that, apparently.
No, it's not. And look, yes, we are very early in the midterm election cycle. But this is basically the DCCC looking at the assessment. Okay, if we want to win back the House, what do we need to do? What are the messages we need to emphasize? What do we need? What problems with our image do we need to fix? And these problems are pretty considerable. And we are now in, early to mid-March. It's still very early in this administration. But I feel like one of the big surprises of the last couple months, Greg, the Democrats are screwing up has always been one of the most reliable good martinis on this podcast. Almost every day we can find something. And I feel like for the last 2.5 months, the Democrats have just been a non-entity in Washington. You've seen some Trump cabinet officials fighting with Elon Musk and DOGE. You obviously the question of can House Republicans get their act together to avoid a government shutdown this week. The really relevant fights, the ones that people are talking about, are Republicans against Republicans, and Democrats are just this bystander. They're just kind of irrelevant to what's going on. That is not a great circumstance if you're trying to change your image. And you could also say that, Chuck Schumer and Hakeem Jeffries are not they're not natural whirling dervishes of raw political charisma, and they're not, no one says, oh my God, did you see what Schumer said today? You just don't hear that. And so if you're the Democrats, that's a really big problem. And the other major problem is that people don't think, like the parts about not respecting work and not feeling like Democrats want people to work. They attribute this to a long COVID hangover. Let's point out, COVID's been over it was 5 years ago. This week, March 12th, was the day that was the day the world shut down. Easy to remember. Key birthday in my family. And 2020 was not a great year for that birthday. Let's just say the entire world coming to a screeching halt. People still feel like the Democrats want to hand out checks and keep you at home and not get the economy moving. And I think it's just kind of this idea of it's very American idea of self-respect. You get up in the morning and you go to work and you work hard. Bill Clinton used to say, people who work hard and play by the rules. And boy, nobody played by the rules like Bill Clinton. But anyway, I think that Democrats have colossal image problems, and maybe between now and the midterm elections, they can just wait for Republicans to screw up, and they'll be able to rebound. It's happened in the past, but I think in general, like the electorate finally sees the same Democratic Party we've been complaining about for most of my lifetime, most of your lifetime, Greg, for a very long time. This government, and the other thing is, we should really fear them, is the working class that feels like it doesn't respect them. Joe Biden was, proudly, I'm the most pro-union president you've ever had, and I'm never going to cross, Build Back Better, inflation, all this stuff was designed to say to the working class, hey, we're on your side. We want to do infrastructure spending. We want to create jobs. And the American public doesn't believe it. Nobody noticed. Nobody saw the stuff being built. Doesn't help when you're not building a lot of electric chargers and stuff like that. Americans don't believe in the Democrats' vision of government and the economy, and that's a colossal problem that they're going to have a very hard time fixing, even in just a year and a half.
Well said. And then their Inflation Reduction Act, quote unquote, was just a big green policy giveaway. And so when they're pulling a fast one on you, in addition to pursuing the same agenda they've been pursuing for decades, people eventually catch on. And that's a big part of social media, too, with X not shutting down people's free speech. People see what the Democrats are really doing. We should point out in the same survey, Republicans are not exactly beloved. 54% of voters saying they view Republicans in Congress unfavorably. But the numbers for Democrats are way worse. 69% of voters said Democrats were too focused on being politically correct. So they've got a long way to go. And let's hope it takes them a really, really long time to figure it out, because them back in power would not be a good thing either. But here's a good thing. Oracle. Artificial intelligence is suddenly everywhere, and even if you think it's a bit overhyped, everything from self-driving cars to molecular medicine to business efficiency is now relying on AI, and if it's not in your industry yet, it's coming quickly. But AI needs a lot of speed and computing power. So how do you compete without costs spiraling out of control? Well, it's time to upgrade to the next generation of the cloud. Oracle Cloud Infrastructure, or OCI.
OCI's global network and flexible options will tackle your toughest business challenges. It's a single platform for all of your infrastructure, database, application development, and AI needs, with 4 to 8 times the bandwidth of other clouds, all offered at one consistent price instead of variable regional pricing.
Right now, Oracle is offering to cut your current cloud bill in half if you move to OCI for new U.S. customers with minimum financial commitment. The offer ends March 31st. See if your company qualifies for this special offer at oracle.com/martini. That's oracle.com/martini. Well, as Jim Garrity says in his morning jolt today, and I highly recommend this to everyone, don't check your 401k this morning as we enter into our bad martini. And if you're riding it out for the long haul, you're just going to raise your blood pressure for no reason. Anyway, but yesterday was a really bad day.
Long haul, you'll probably be fine. Probably. Let's just hope you don't have kids going to college soon. Better news for the Columbus house than the Garrity house.
Yeah, yesterday was rough. The Dow Jones Industrials was down, almost 900 points. At one point, it was down well more than 1,000. The NASDAQ is off 10% since Election Day. The S&P 500 is off. Everything's lower than it was Inauguration Day and now, I believe, Election Day. Yes. And so the question now is this a blip? Is this the start of a bear market? A lot of people believe the markets are overvalued still from the Biden era, that we really never paid the price for overspending ridiculously during COVID. Others are saying, as Jim points out in the article, that tariffs are a problem. Other people are saying inconsistent application of tariffs create uncertainty, and markets hate uncertainty perhaps more than anything. And oh, by the way, the guy who said that the Democrats were about to unleash bad inflation numbers back in 2021 and the Democrats didn't listen to him, says we're now 50-50 for a recession going forward. Our Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick says no. Donald Trump says he won't say. Larry Summers, of course, the former Clinton Treasury Secretary, is the guy who said it back in 21 and is saying it again now. So we are probably in for more pain before we're in for rosier days on the stock market. It's a question of how much. So both politically and financially, Jim, what are your big takeaways from yesterday?
Well, for starters, as I alluded to a moment ago, if you're in the long-term haul, you're probably going to be fine. Although also I believe it was Keynes who said in the long run, we're all dead. Look, one bad day in the market, nothing to get that upset about. Several bad days, and as you noted, the problem is not really just that one bad day. It's that we've now wiped out all of the post-election boom that we saw in the markets. And you can make the argument that the stock markets are an imperfect measurement for the performance of the economy. The stock markets actually did pretty darn well throughout the Biden years, and there was not a great deal of economic optimism because of inflation and the high cost of living. People go, yeah, my 401k is doing better, but I'm spending more at the grocery store and at the gas pump all the time. It's possible that, as the Trump administration argues, this is a temporary blip. This is short-term pain for longer-term gain, and it's nothing to worry about. You mentioned Larry Summers, and you don't have to love everything Larry Summers has ever said or done to recognize that back in those early months of 2021, he was one of the few Democrats who was saying, hey, guys, we've gone on a runaway spending binge. We put way too much money into the economy, not nearly enough goods and services to catch up. You're increasing the risk of inflation. And, of course, Joe Biden famously said, no serious economist says there was any risk of sustained inflation, of course. And then inflation jumped all the way up to 9%. I think there's a reason the markets are jittery, as you alluded to. Markets don't like tariffs because it makes everything more expensive, and they don't like uncertainty. And right now, the Trump administration, for the first 2.5 months, has generated three big things: tariffs, uncertainty, and uncertainty about tariffs. It's just everything the markets do not like, all in one large scoop. Now, maybe this is indeed an adjustment period. You're going to see supply lines get refocused back in the United States. People will get adjusted to these new prices and things will be better. I wouldn't be 100% sure of this. I suppose if you're really looking for a silver lining for Republicans, if you're going to have a recession during your presidency, you want to get it out of the way as early as possible. Summers is now putting it at just under 50-50. The Atlanta Federal Reserve Bank does this, GDP now, which is its projection of quarterly. It's right now saying this quarter is going to be down 2%, which, and the recession traditionally is defined as 2 consecutive quarters of GDP getting smaller instead of larger. This happened during the Biden years, and everybody says, well, it's not a real recession. A real recession, as they say, is, when your neighbor loses his job. Depression is when you lose your job. And a recovery is when the president loses his job. And that's I think there's reason for this. Kevin Hassett says we're going to be just barely in positive territory, and he thinks the second quarter under Trump is going to be gangbusters. We will see. But I think this is safe to say the early economic moves are, freaking out the markets. By the time people hear this today, maybe there's a recovery day. Usually when the stock market crashes, and goes down a couple hundred points, it generally rebounds the next day. But I think businesses want to know how much the supply chains are going to cost. And that doesn't seem like an unreasonable request on their part. And when the president changes his mind and is always issuing these 30-day, delays and exceptions and well, we're going to do this, but maybe we're going to do that. Not great. Lutnick says there's no chance of a recession. The president was less certain in his interview with Marita Bartiromo this weekend. A rare time for Trump to be not bold and boisterous and making a bold proclamation. So we'll see what happens. But this is a very serious rattle in the engine of the American economy right now.
Yeah, we'll see where it goes. But I think there's a lot more down to come before we bounce back up. And you mentioned that Biden said no serious economist would suggest inflation is on the way. July 19th, 2021. That's the same month he said that everything's fine in Afghanistan. So if you're looking for bad predictions, July 2021 for Joe Biden is definitely up there in the Hall of Fame. But don't worry, Jim. I heard that Jim Cramer thinks that everything's going to be fine. And if you're on Twitter, you know that that's basically going to induce a panic. So
when Jim Cramer says the economy is going to be fine, prepare for a Mad Max future. Put all of your assets into assless chaps and machine guns and hockey masks, because that's... We're headed towards an apocalyptic wasteland. That's the economic projections. We'll see, We already talked about sports. Let's turn to weather.
Today's podcast is sponsored by BetterHelp. And let's talk about some numbers. Traditional in-person therapy can cost anywhere from $100 to $250 per session, which adds up fast. But with BetterHelp online therapy, you can save an average of 50% per session. Plus, with BetterHelp, you pay a flat fee for weekly sessions, which saves you big on cost and time.
Therapy should feel accessible and not like a luxury. With online therapy, you get quality care at a price that makes sense. It can help you with anything from anxiety to just everyday stress. Your mental health is worth it, and now it's within reach.
With more than 30,000 therapists, BetterHelp is the world's largest online therapy platform, having served more than 5 million people globally. You can join a session with the click of a button, helping you fit therapy into your busy life, and you can switch therapists at any time. As Jim said, your well-being is worth it. Visit BetterHelp.com/3ML to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/3ML. All right, Jim, as mentioned, our Crazy Martini deals with some of the things that have been cut from the Pentagon budget. This is actually from the Defense Department website, defense.gov, with the title, Pentagon Culls Social Science Research, Prioritizes Fiscal Responsibility and Technologies for Future Battlefield. They say they've sliced out more than $30 million in spending in the first year through the discontinuation of 91 studies. And they don't list all of them, but they do list some, and here's a few of them. The Climate Food Urbanization Nexus and Precursors of Instability in Africa. Couple of points there, first of all. The Pentagon doesn't need to be studying climate change, first of all. But secondly, if you're going to do a study, at least use words in the title where people understand what in the world you're talking about. Democracy Quest, which sounds like a video game or a movie. We also have Anticipating Coastal, it says coastal, I think it's coastal, population mobility, path to maladaptation or socio-political stability. But our favorite, Beyond the Clock, understanding cross-cultural temporal orientation of military officers. Jim, this reminds me of the time that the guys in The Fugitive were in the hotel trying to find Dr. Charles Nichols, and they saw the title of his speech about cardiovascular whatnot, and they're saying, oh, I bet they all line up for that one. But this is what our tax dollars were spent on, and when you can't even explain it in common English, it's probably a pretty good indication that it's not the best use of our tax dollars.
91 ongoing studies related to threats, this is according to science.org, related to threats such as climate change, extremism, and disinformation. Now, first of all, let's point out, we do have an intelligence community that can study this stuff too, separate from the Pentagon. Although I guess, the Defense Intelligence Agency is kind of a little bit of both. We have the Army War College. We have the Naval Academy. We have the Naval War College. We have a whole bunch of institutions already existing in the Pentagon that no doubt can research some of these things. And look, you want to talk about migration patterns and how that could contribute to instability? Okay, I can see a national security interest in some of that stuff. Famines or stuff like that. Okay, I'm really willing to cut a lot of slack. But beyond the clock, understanding cross-cultural temporal orientation of military officers. Greg, to quote the meme, ain't nobody got time for that. And the reason we don't have time for that is apparently we're all operating on different... What are they studying? Time zone differences or how cultures believe in... I'm sorry. No. We have to prioritize. China's building up its military. Russia's got giant military increases. Every threat in the world is building up its supply of missiles, drones, tanks, ICBM, really big, important stuff. I don't think we need to study, are there institutions in this world that need to study clock management? Yes, primarily the Jets and the Bears. There are a whole bunch of head coaches that need to study temporal. And if this is going to lead to time travel, okay, I take it all back. This is going to be a hunky dory. But otherwise, if you're just studying how cultures feel about clocks and time, I'm sorry, this is not enough of a direct military application. Hegseth, you're absolutely some of this stuff, maybe we'll see. And here's the thing, if it turns out that this is there's an enormous need to know about migration patterns related to climate change and the fact that, certain countries can become unstable because of influx of migrants, all right, we can start them back up again. But in this case, this really does seem like a whole bunch of spending that could have been done by other departments if it really was necessary, and it really just doesn't belong at the Pentagon. Attaboy, let's see how things are going. I think we'll be fine.
Unless climate change has suddenly developed nukes, I'm pretty sure the military doesn't need to focus on that.
Isn't every university in the entire country, if not the entire world, studying climate change simultaneously? At some point, do you have enough climate change research? Every one of these reports comes back and says, well, it's really bad. Okay, thank you. That's kind of what I figured was going to happen here.
Yes, then you spend all this money. The report goes on a shelf.
It's so bad, we need more money to study it.
Yes, that's always the conclusion. Exactly. All right. Well, Jim, again, we had a good martini today, so that's exciting. And we really had two good martinis when you think about it, with the slicing out of these ridiculous programs. So I like this pattern. Let's do it again, hopefully the rest of the week, but we'll see what the new cycle has in store for us. See you Wednesday.
See you tomorrow, Greg.
Jim Garrity, National Review. I'm Greg Corombos of Radio America. Thanks for being with us today. Please subscribe to the podcast if you don't already. Tell your friends about us as well. Thanks also for your 5-star ratings and your kind reviews. Please keep those coming. Get us on your home devices. All you have to say is play 3 Martini Lunch podcast. Follow us on X. He's at Jim Garrity. I'm at Greg Corombos. Have a terrific Tuesday and join us again Wednesday for the next 3 Martini Lunch.